This is the 217 Recovery Podcast with Corey Winfield.
Can't change, the past. You can't take things back. We all probably wish we could, but we had to go through those and learn those things on our own. And time that God wants us to learn them. It is the night of February 2023. My name is Corey Winfield, and this is the 217 Recovery Podcast, going solo tonight. And speaking about the open there and how you can't change the past and we have to learn things when we have to learn them, how God sets it up for us, because there's a lot of things early in my recovery I would have liked to change. But now looking at it, everything had to happen for a reason. And it brings me to today where I'm having these crazy stress thoughts, and they're good stress. I did a podcast, I think last week, and we called it Sober People Problems. These are good problems to have, but they're still problems. It still can create stress in your life. And tonight, actually it happened about 3 o'clock this afternoon. I was sitting in the office and I just felt like I needed to go to a meeting. And if you are in early recovery or in long-term recovery, you probably still get these feelings. And I assume I'm going to get them the rest of my life. I mean, I might have, God willing, 20 years clean, and then if I get that feeling, I'm going to go to a meeting, because if I don't, it's going to fester. It may not be today, may not be tomorrow, maybe 3 months from now. But as the festering grows, it gets bigger, and that temptation becomes a little bit closer. If that makes any sense. So I started texting people that I know, a couple of them, and seeing what they were doing. And I'm like, man, do I feel like going to a meeting? And I'm like, nah, not really. And it started snowing really bad in Traverse City. So I was like, let me just make a pizza. And then the guy I had texted with earlier, I didn't really ask him to go to a meeting. I was just kind of filling him out, seeing what he was doing. But he was finishing up some stuff at court. And he texted me and said, hey, are you coming to the meeting tonight? He's like, you better be there. And I thought about it, and I thought, I do need to go to a meeting. I do need maybe hit back-to-backs. And that's what I did. There's some decisions coming down that I've been like wanting, wishing for, hoping for, working towards, however you want to put it. And now it's here. And now the fear sets in. The fear of failure. Am I going to do good enough? Am I going to choose the right one? And only God knows. He led me down this path. He's created these opportunities for me. I'm so blessed. My family's blessed. Not everybody makes it out of active addiction. And today I have, and I am, and I'm in recovery, and that feels damn good. And to be where I'm at, I'm proud. But at the same time, I worry, and the fear will creep in. And I haven't had this kind of fear, and I guess some of it's fear of being judged. Because what if I fail? Then what are people going to say? All them haters out there are going to be like, I told you Corey couldn't do it. I don't know. I haven't really had to face that too many times in my life, but it still creeps in. I'm sure it creeps into some of the best. Sure, Tom Brady's thought that before, but he had to overcome it. That Super Bowl where he was down big time against Atlanta and he came back and won the Super Bowl. Do you think at halftime he was in there crying about, people think I suck? He's like, let's go back out and win this. And that's the kind of attitude that I think you need to have if you're going to be successful in life with anything you do. Because even if I try this, or I pick the wrong one and it doesn't work out, I'm not going to give up. That's not going to be the end of my story. I'm not going to tuck tail and run. But it's still a tough decision that I have to make. And, I've involved other people kind of in the decision of, where we're going to have our recovery center. And I'll never find the perfect one. It's kind of like when I started this podcast. That's the last time I kind of had this dread, fear of being judged kind of thing, is before I started the podcast. And I'll talk about that just for a second before I jump back into what I was talking about. But when I started the podcast, I was telling everybody in treatment that I was going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast about my recovery. I was talking to a woman that works here at the Streaming Center, and she told me that I should start a podcast and I should talk about my recovery, and that would probably help me, especially with the background in radio. Like, this is in my blood. Like, this would be great for me. And it has. It's turned into therapy. But at first, it was so, I don't want to say scary. Like, I knew how to do it, but I was afraid. We'll just say that. I guess I couldn't say it was scary as I was afraid, but about being judged. And I was moving into a sober living house with like 16 guys at the time. I thought, what are they going to think about me? And that same lady who told me to start the podcast was like, well, if they're hating on you, if they're talking smack, then it's because they're not doing anything with their own recovery. And that still holds true today. I see people, they don't like me, and they have no reason to feel that way about me, except for the fact that I'm doing something and they're not. That's the only thing I can think of. I've never said a bad word about these people. It just happens. That's just life. That's how it goes. Some people get jealous and they're just like, whatever. But I was still worried, and I took that kind of mindset of, you know what, if they don't like it, then that's their problem. I'm doing this for me. And I did. But now I feel that same kind of like worry about it. And when I got out of treatment, I didn't just get out and then the next day start the podcast. I got out and I started the company the next day, but I didn't actually start the podcast until like a week or two later. And I had to make everything perfect. Everything had to be great. I had to get a website, but I didn't have any money. So I ended up finding an app. I think it was called Universe or something like that. But it was like $10 a month. And it was only for Apple. I think they have it now for Android. But it was $10 a month. I was like, man, I can swing that. So I did that, and I knew how to do a little bit of stuff in Photoshop. So it made the working with the app a lot easier for me. So I did that, and then I needed to find the right platform to do it on, and everything had to be perfect, and I was just dragging my feet. And I went to pick up this guy named Ryan from treatment. He was in the same treatment center I was at, and he was going to the same sober living home. So I picked him up, and he was excited. I remember he had this big cheesy smile on his face. He got in the car, and he's like, all right, man, let me hear it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Let you hear what? You want to hear a song? He's like, no, let me hear the podcast, man. Oh, man, I haven't started yet because, I got to get this. But he just shook his head, and he's like, man, I'm really disappointed in you. And when he said that to me, it kind of lit a fire. The same fire that my friend Ricky had said to me when I was talking about starting the podcast in treatment. He's like, yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good. Everybody's got something that sounds good while they're in treatment. See if you really do it when you get out. And that kind of lit a fire. And then when Ryan had said that to me, it was just like, okay. He's disappointed. Like, he thought I'd have this going, and it wasn't like I was just talking a big game, or was I? So I had to kind of look in the mirror. And we got back home, I jumped online on Facebook and was like, hey, the podcast starts Saturday at 6. Listen, we'll go live our first one. So that I had to do it. It's like when you're going swimming and the lake's cold and you're wading in it, and when you get up to your crotch and your belly, you're like, ooh. But man, if you just jump in, yeah, you're wet, but it'll warm up. So it's kind of like that approach to it. So now I'm feeling that same kind of similar feeling of wanting to have everything perfect. I just want to wade in the water when I'm not going to drown. I just need to jump in. Things don't need to be perfect because I'll never find that. I'll never find the perfect building. There's not going to be a room that's just perfect for this or perfect for that unless I build one. And that's not happening anytime soon. But I guess I just need to just pray, trust God, and know that he's gotten me this far. He didn't get me this far just to throw me in the middle of the road and have me hit by a bus, I hope. I wouldn't think so. But those are some things that are on my mind right now, and I just figured I would share. And, in 6 months, hopefully I can listen to this podcast. And I obviously will know exactly where I was at this moment. I mean, mentally and, emotionally. But I don't know how it's going to change. 6 months from now, I could be just laughing when I listen to this going, oh, Corey, you worry too much. You're worrying about nothing. Everything's going great. Hopefully that's what happens. But I'll have to revisit it in August. Man, can you believe August is just 6 months away? It's going to be hot. Football's going to be right around the corner. And then we're about to have the Super Bowl. 6 months. We'll see. But anyway, I just wanted to check in and kind of let you know what was going on in my mind, as somebody in recovery. Those things happen. Even when people on the outside are looking in, going, oh, things are going great. He's doing just fine. Sometimes we're still struggling. And that's what I have a therapist for. That's what I have this podcast for. That's what I have my wife for, people that I can talk to. That's what I have my friends for. I can run it by them and they'll look at me and say, man, you've been quiet, Corey. What's going on? You're thinking too much. Yeah, I am. But those are things that need to be said. Thanks for listening. Get the 217 Recovery app if you don't have it yet. I think we're going to keep that around for a little bit. So get it. It's cool to check out the podcast, especially from, early on, 2019, 2020. You can go back down memory lane. There's 750, 60, something like that. Yeah, a lot of podcasts to listen to. But thanks for doing that. And I will talk to you on Saturday when Marnie will join us. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the 217 Recovery Podcast. We hope you come back for our next episode.